Wait, don't scroll away yet, because what happened inside that glittering engagement party made 300 rich guests forget how to breathe. A maid's little son was standing near the marble staircase, holding his mother's hand, while everyone around him thought the billionaire had collapsed forever. The music had stopped, people were crying, some guests were whispering, but the billionaire's fiancée, she wasn't crying the way a woman in love should cry. She stood there in her silver gown, holding a champagne glass, with a tiny smile hiding behind her fake tears. Then she whispered, "Finally, it's over." But before anyone could call it a tragedy, the maid's little boy stepped forward, his voice shaking, his eyes locked on her face. And he shouted, "Don't celebrate yet, he's alive." The whole ballroom froze, the fiancé's face turned white. And then, right there on the cold marble floor, the billionaire opened his eyes, sat up slowly, and looked straight at the woman he was supposed to marry. Nobody knew this little boy had just exposed the secret that would destroy her perfect life forever. Nobody noticed the maid's little son standing behind the white roses. He was only 4 years old, wearing a small navy shirt his mother had washed by hand the night before. His name was Oliver Bennett, and he was the kind of child who stayed quiet because he already understood that his mother's job depended on silence. His mother, Clara Bennett, worked as a maid at Westbrook Manor, one of the richest estates in the city. The mansion had marble floors, golden chandeliers, a ballroom bigger than Clara's entire apartment building, and gates so tall that Oliver once asked if giants lived there. Clara had worked there for 3 years. She knew how to move without being seen. She knew how to smile when guests ignored her. She knew how to lower her eyes when rich women spoke like kindness was too expensive to waste on staff. But tonight was different. Tonight was Adrian Westbrook's engagement party. Adrian was 34, a billionaire known for his cold face and quiet power. People said he could buy buildings with one phone call and destroy companies with one signature. But Clara had seen something softer in him. He never shouted at the staff, he always said thank you. Once, when Oliver fell asleep in the laundry hallway, Adrian had placed his own coat over the boy without telling anyone. Since that day, Oliver called him Mr. A. Clara always corrected him, whispering, "Mr. Westbrook, sweetheart." But Adrian never seemed to mind. The woman he was marrying was Vivienne Sterling. She was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful. Silver gown, perfect hair, diamond smile. Everyone at the party admired her, cameras followed her, guests praised her. But the staff knew the truth. Vivienne was cruel. She called the maids the help. She complained if a glass had one fingerprint. She once made a gardener redo an entire flower display because the shade of white was too poor-looking. But most of all, she hated seeing Oliver in the mansion. "A maid's child should not be wandering around a house like this," she had once told Clara. Clara had apologized that day until her throat burned. Oliver had asked her later, "Mama, do I not belong there?" Clara had held his face and said, "You belong wherever I am." Now, on the night of the engagement party, Clara had no babysitter. Her neighbor cancelled at the last minute, and Clara couldn't afford to miss work. So Mrs. Larkin, the old housekeeper, quietly told her to bring Oliver and keep him in the back pantry with crayons. "Just keep him hidden," Mrs. Larkin whispered. So Clara did. She gave Oliver his little notebook, 2 crackers wrapped in tissue, and his broken toy car. "Stay here, okay? No running, no talking to guests, no touching anything." Oliver nodded seriously. "I know, Mama." By 7 o'clock, the mansion was glowing. 300 guests filled the ballroom. Women in shining gowns laughed under the chandelier. Men in black suits held champagne glasses and spoke about money, politics, and weddings. The orchestra played soft music near the staircase. Clara moved through the crowd with a tray in her hands. Nobody looked at her face. They only looked at the drinks. Near the stage, Adrian stood beside Vivienne. He looked calm but tired. Vivienne looked perfect, like she had been waiting her whole life to be photographed in that exact light. Then Clara saw something strange. Vivienne was standing near a side hallway, speaking to an older man in a dark suit. He did not look like a guest. He looked nervous. His eyes kept moving around the room. Clara slowed as she passed with an empty tray. Vivienne's voice was low. "After the toast," she whispered, "not before. Make sure it's his glass." The man slipped something small into his palm. A tiny bottle. Clara's heart tightened. Before she could move away, Vivienne's eyes snapped toward her. "Do you need something?" Vivienne asked, smiling sweetly, but her eyes were sharp. Clara lowered her head. No, ma'am, just taking the tray back. Then go. Clara walked away quickly, telling herself not to imagine things. Maybe it was medicine, maybe perfume, maybe some rich person thing she didn't understand. But when she returned to the pantry, Oliver was gone. Her breath stopped. Oliver? She whispered. Then she saw him near the hallway, half hidden behind a tall vase of roses. His little face was pale. Clara rushed to him. What are you doing out here? Oliver looked up at her. Mama, the pretty lady gave that man a tiny bottle. Clara froze. Before she could answer, Vivian appeared behind them. Well, Vivian said softly, there he is. Clara pulled Oliver behind her. I'm so sorry, he wandered out. I'll take him back. Vivian stepped closer. I told you children should not be visible tonight. He didn't mean any harm. Vivian looked down at Oliver's cracked shoe, then back at Clara. Children like him listen, then they repeat, then they create problems. Clara's stomach dropped. Vivian leaned closer and whispered, if your son repeats anything he thinks he saw, you and your little boy will be out before midnight. Do you understand? Clara swallowed her fear. Yes, ma'am. Vivian smiled again and returned to the ballroom like nothing had happened. Clara took Oliver back to the pantry and knelt in front of him. Baby, listen to me, don't say anything about what you saw. Oliver's eyes filled with worry. Did I do bad? No, Clara whispered, hugging him. You didn't do anything bad. Then why is she scared? Clara had no answer. A few minutes later, the official toast began. Guests gathered near the stage, servers lifted champagne trays. Adrian stood beside Vivian, holding a glass. Vivian smiled as if her whole future was about to begin. Clara stood near the back wall, holding her breath. Then Oliver appeared beside her again. His small hand grabbed her dress. Mama, he whispered. Clara looked down, panicked. Oliver, go back. But he was staring at Adrian's glass. That's the glass, Oliver whispered. The man put the tiny bottle near that glass. Clara's whole body went cold. On the stage, Adrian raised his champagne. Vivian said brightly, to forever. The crowd repeated, to forever. Then Adrian drank. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the glass slipped from his hand and shattered across the marble floor. Adrian grabbed his chest. The ballroom gasped. Vivian screamed his name, but Oliver saw what no one else saw. Before she screamed, she smiled. Adrian collapsed beneath the chandelier, motionless. Guests rushed forward. Someone shouted for a doctor. Someone cried. Clara grabbed Oliver and held him tight, but the little boy kept staring at Vivian. The billionaire lay still on the floor. Vivian knelt beside him with fake tears on her face. Everyone thought they were watching a tragedy, but Oliver knew they were watching a lie. And in the next moment, his small voice would stop the entire engagement party cold. For 3 seconds, the whole ballroom forgot how to move. The music stopped so suddenly that the silence felt louder than the orchestra. Champagne glasses froze halfway to people's lips. Women in diamonds covered their mouths. Men in expensive suits stepped back as if the billionaire's collapse had cracked the floor beneath them. Adrian Westbrook lay on the marble beneath the chandelier, one hand near his chest, his face pale, his body completely still. Vivian dropped beside him in her silver gown. Adrian, she cried, pressing her hand dramatically to his shoulder. Somebody help him, please. Her voice shook beautifully, her tears came quickly. Everything about her looked like grief. But Oliver had seen the smile. That tiny smile before the scream. The kind of smile a person makes when something has gone exactly as planned. Clara held him tightly against her side, one hand over the back of his head. She wanted to turn him away, she wanted to cover his ears. She wanted to disappear into the wall and take her son somewhere safe, far away from that mansion and that woman. But Oliver kept looking. His little face had gone white. Mama, he whispered, she's pretending. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. Oliver, quiet, she whispered quickly. A doctor pushed through the crowd, an older man in a black tuxedo, kneeling beside Adrian and checking his pulse. Another guest shouted for an ambulance. The housekeeper began ordering staff to clear the area, but nobody really moved. Everyone wanted to see. Everyone wanted to know if the richest man in the room had just died in front of them. Vivian bent over Adrian, sobbing into her hands. No, 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 she cried. This can't be happening, not tonight, not our night. But her eyes were not on Adrian. They kept flicking toward the side hallway. toward the older man in the dark suit, the same man who had held the tiny bottle. Clara saw it too. The man was slowly moving toward the exit, trying to disappear behind a group of guests. His face was tense, his shoulders were stiff. He looked like someone who had done what he came to do and now wanted to vanish before anyone remembered him. Clara's mouth went dry. Oliver's fingers dug into her dress. "Mama," he whispered again, "that's the man." "Please, baby," Clara whispered, her voice breaking, "don't." Because she knew what happened to people like them when they accused people like Vivienne. They lost jobs, they lost homes, they lost the tiny pieces of safety they had built with years of silence. Vivienne suddenly looked up, her eyes landed on Oliver. For 1 second, her tears stopped. Clara felt it like a knife. Vivienne had heard him. She stood slowly, still pretending to tremble, and pointed toward Clara with a shaking hand. "Get them out," she said. The room turned. Clara froze. Vivienne's voice rose, filled with fake pain and real anger. "Get that maid and her child out of here. My fiancé is lying on the floor, and her son is whispering nonsense like this is some kind of game." Clara's cheeks burned as hundreds of eyes shifted toward her. "I'm sorry," Clara whispered. "I was just trying to—" "You were supposed to keep him hidden," Vivienne snapped, no longer able to hide the sharpness beneath her grief. "This is exactly why children of staff do not belong in events like this." Oliver flinched. Clara pulled him closer. Mrs. Larkin stepped forward carefully. "Miss Sterling, maybe this isn't the time." "Not the time," Vivienne cried. "Adrian may be dead, and you're defending the maid?" The word dead rolled through the ballroom. Some guests gasped. A woman began crying harder. The doctor kept checking Adrian, his face serious but strangely unreadable. Vivienne turned back to the crowd, her voice softer now, practiced again. "I'm sorry, I'm just overwhelmed. Please everyone, give him space." Then, very slowly, she leaned closer to Clara, as if she were only passing by. Her lips barely moved. "If that boy opens his mouth again," she whispered, "you will regret bringing him into this house." Clara's blood went cold. Oliver heard it, and something changed in him. Until that moment, he had been scared, confused, clinging to his mother like any 4-year-old would in a room full of shouting adults. But now he looked from Vivienne's fake tears to Adrian's still body, then to the dark-suited man almost at the door. His small chest rose and fell quickly. He understood only one thing. Mr. A was on the floor. The pretty lady was lying. And his mother was afraid because the truth was dangerous. The doctor leaned closer to Adrian and said something quietly to a man beside him. Vivienne wiped her tears with one hand, but with the other she reached toward the folds of her gown. Oliver saw the tiny bottle again, empty, hidden between her fingers. His eyes widened. Before Clara could stop him, Oliver slipped from her arms. "Oliver!" Clara gasped. He ran forward, not far, just a few tiny steps into the open space beneath the chandelier. His little shoes squeaked against the marble, his broken toy car was still clutched in his hand. The whole ballroom looked down at him. Vivienne turned, her face hardened. "Take him away," she ordered. But Oliver pointed at her. His voice shook, but it carried across the room. "Don't celebrate yet." The room went silent. Clara stopped breathing. Vivienne's face turned white. Oliver's eyes filled with tears, but he shouted again, louder this time. "Don't celebrate yet. He's alive." "No." A stunned murmur moved through the guests. Vivienne laughed once too quickly. "He's a child, he doesn't know what he's saying." But Oliver pointed toward her hand. "You smiled when he fell," he cried, "and you have the tiny bottle." Every head turned to Vivienne's hand. For the first time that night, her perfect mask cracked. She quickly closed her fist, but it was too late. The doctor looked up. The older man near the exit stopped walking. Clara covered her mouth, tears burning in her eyes. Vivienne stepped toward Oliver. "You little liar." But before she could reach him, a voice came from the marble floor. Weak, low, but clear enough to freeze every soul in that ballroom. "He's not lying." Vivienne stopped. Slowly, every guest turned back toward Adrian Westbrook. His fingers moved first, then his eyes opened. A wave of shock passed through the room. Adrian took a slow breath, pushed himself up on one elbow, and looked straight at Vivienne. His face was pale, his voice was quiet, but his eyes were colder than the marble beneath him. "Oliver told the truth," he said. Vivienne stumbled back. The billionaire everyone thought was dead was alive. and the maid's little son had just exposed the woman who wanted him gone. For a moment, no one in the ballroom made a sound, not the guests, not the orchestra, not even Vivienne. Everyone stared at Adrian Westbrook as he slowly sat up from the marble floor, pale but alive, breathing hard, his eyes locked on the woman who had been smiling only seconds earlier. Vivienne looked like the ground had disappeared under her feet. "Adrian," she whispered, You're alive." Adrian gave a faint, bitter smile. "That seems to disappoint you." A shocked gasp moved through the room. Vivienne shook her head quickly, tears returning to her face, but this time they were not beautiful. They were messy, desperate, frightened. No, don't say that. I was scared. I thought I lost you." Adrian looked at Oliver. The little boy stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, his tiny fingers still pointing toward Vivienne. His lips were trembling now, as if he had only just realized that every rich, powerful adult in the room was staring at him. Clara rushed forward and pulled him into her arms. "I'm sorry," she cried. "Please, Mr. Westbrook, he's only a child, he didn't mean to cause trouble." Adrian's expression softened for the first time. "He didn't cause trouble," Adrian said quietly. "He saved my life." Clara froze. Oliver looked up from his mother's arms. "I did?" he whispered. Adrian nodded slowly. "Yes, buddy, you did." Vivienne stood quickly, her silver gown shaking around her legs. "This is insane. You cannot seriously believe a 4-year-old over me." "I don't have to believe only him," Adrian said. He turned his head toward the side hallway. "Bring him back." 2 security guards immediately moved toward the older man in the dark suit who had been trying to slip out near the back doors. The man panicked and pushed past a waiter, knocking a tray of glasses to the floor. But he didn't get far. One guard caught his arm, the other blocked the exit. The ballroom erupted into whispers. Vivienne's face went white. Adrian slowly stood with the doctor's help. He was weak, but his voice carried across the room. 3 weeks ago, I started feeling like something was wrong in my own house. Documents from my study moved, my doctor's appointments changed without my permission, medicine appeared in my cabinet that I never asked for. Vivienne shook her head. "Adrian, stop this." He didn't stop. "At first I thought I was stressed. Then Mrs. Larkin told me one of the kitchen staff saw a stranger entering the service hallway twice, so I hired an investigator." The older man struggled in the guard's grip. "This is a mistake," he said quickly. "I don't know anything." Adrian looked at him coldly. "You know enough to bring a bottle into my engagement party." A louder gasp filled the room. Vivienne stepped forward. "He's lying. I don't even know that man." Oliver suddenly lifted his head from Clara's shoulder. "Yes, you do," he said softly. "You talked to him." Every eye moved to the little boy again. Vivienne's lips parted. Oliver's voice shook, but he kept speaking. "You said, after the toast, you said make sure it's his glass." Clara closed her eyes as tears slipped down her cheeks. She wanted to protect her son from this room, from these people, from the danger of telling the truth. But it was too late. The truth had already walked into the light. Adrian's jaw tightened. "That's exactly what my investigator heard too." Vivienne froze. From the back of the ballroom, a man in a plain black suit stepped forward. He had been standing near the wall the entire night, unnoticed by almost everyone. He opened his phone and played a recording. Vivienne's voice filled the ballroom. "After the first toast, not before, make sure it's his glass." The room went dead silent. Vivienne stumbled backward. "No," she whispered, that's edited, that's not me." Adrian looked at her with pain in his eyes now. Not shock, not confusion, pain, the kind that comes when betrayal finally becomes real. "I wanted to be wrong," he said, "even when I saw the reports, even when I saw the lab results, even when I knew someone had arranged for that bottle to be brought here tonight, some part of me still hoped there was another explanation." Vivienne's face twisted. "Then why did you drink it?" "I didn't," the guests murmured again. Adrian looked toward the doctor beside him. "My doctor and investigator helped me switch the glass before the toast. What I drank was harmless. The collapse was planned. I needed to see what you would do if you thought your plan had worked." Vivienne covered her mouth. Adrian's voice became colder. "And you smiled." Clara held Oliver tighter. The little boy whispered, "I saw it." Adrian turned to him. "So did I, buddy." Vivienne suddenly changed. The tears vanished. Her softness disappeared. The perfect bride everyone had admired became someone else entirely. "You set me up," she hissed. Adrian took one slow step toward her. No, Vivienne, you set yourself up. Her hands curled into fists. Do you have any idea what it's like to stand beside you? To be treated like decoration while everyone worships your money? My family is drowning. My father's company is finished. Everything I had was built on looking perfect, and you were going to protect yourself with that prenup like I was some stranger. So you decided I should die? I decided I deserved security, she snapped. A woman in the crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Vivienne realized too late what she had admitted. The older man in the guard's grip dropped his head, defeated. Adrian stared at her like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. I would have helped you, he said quietly. If you had told me the truth, I would have helped your family. But you didn't want help. You wanted my name, my money, and my death. Vivienne's eyes filled again, but now no one believed the tears. Security moved closer. The investigator spoke quietly into his phone, calling the police officers waiting outside the gates. Vivienne looked around the ballroom, searching for sympathy, but the same people who had praised her beauty an hour earlier now stepped away from her like she was poison. Then her eyes landed on Clara, and then on Oliver. Her face hardened with hatred. You, she whispered. This is because of your little boy. Clara stepped back instinctively. Adrian moved between them at once. No, he said firmly. This is because of you. But Vivienne wasn't listening anymore. Her perfect life had shattered in front of 300 people, and she needed someone smaller to blame. She pointed at Oliver, her voice shaking with rage. If he had kept his mouth shut, none of this would have happened. Oliver buried his face in Clara's neck. And that was the moment Adrian Westbrook stopped looking like a betrayed fiancé and started looking like a man ready to protect the child who had saved him. Vivienne's words hit the ballroom like poison. If he had kept his mouth shut, none of this would have happened. Clara felt Oliver's little body shake in her arms. He was only 4 years old, too small to understand money, betrayal, poison, or police. All he knew was that he had told the truth, and now the woman in the silver gown was looking at him like he had destroyed her life. Clara pulled him close. Don't look at her, baby, she whispered. Look at me. But Adrian had already stepped forward. His face was pale from the staged collapse, his body still weak, but his eyes were cold and steady. He moved between Vivienne and Oliver, blocking her from the child completely. Don't you dare blame him, Adrian said. Vivienne laughed bitterly. You're defending the maid's son now? I'm defending the only person in this room brave enough to say the truth. The ballroom went silent again. Vivienne looked around, hoping someone would stand with her. But the same guests who had praised her beauty an hour earlier now stepped away from her. No one wanted to be near her. No one wanted to be connected to the woman who had smiled while Adrian lay on the floor. Outside, sirens echoed through the gates. Vivienne heard them and her face changed. Anger became panic. Adrian, she whispered, stepping toward him, please, we can talk about this. You don't have to ruin my life. Adrian stared at her with pain in his eyes. You tried to end mine. She shook her head fast. I was scared. My family was losing everything. You don't know what that feels like. No, Adrian said quietly. I don't know what it feels like to choose murder over honesty. 2 police officers entered the ballroom with Adrian's investigator. The guests moved aside, creating a silent path. The older man in the dark suit was already caught by security near the side door. When the police took him, he didn't fight. He only lowered his head, knowing the truth was finished hiding. But Vivienne fought with her words until the last second. You all know me, she cried, turning to the guests. Tell them I would never do this. Nobody answered. The recording had played, the bottle had been seen, Oliver had spoken, Adrian was alive. When the officer reached for her wrist, Vivienne looked one last time at Clara and Oliver. This is because of you, she hissed. Adrian's voice cut through the room. No, this is because of you. The officers led her away. Her silver gown brushed across the marble floor, past the broken champagne glass, past the untouched engagement cake, past the flowers she had chosen for the perfect night that had now become her downfall. When the doors closed behind her, the whole mansion felt different. Oliver slowly lifted his face from Clara's shoulder. Mr. A, he whispered, are you okay now? A soft, emotional sound passed through the room. Adrian knelt in front of him. I'm okay, buddy. Oliver's lips trembled. She said I made trouble. Adrian's eyes softened. No. You stopped trouble. There's a big difference. Clara began to cry. I'm sorry, she said. I saw something earlier, but I was afraid. I thought if I spoke, I'd lose my job. I thought I'd lose the only thing keeping us alive. Adrian looked at her, then at the staff standing quietly near the walls. Clara, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, no one in this house will ever lose their place for telling the truth. Mrs. Larkin covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. For years the staff had kept Westbrook Manor alive while powerful guests walked past them like shadows. But tonight, for the first time, everyone saw them, their fear, their silence, their worth. By midnight, the guests were gone, the ballroom was empty, the orchestra had packed up. The engagement cake stood untouched under the chandelier. Clara sat in the kitchen with Oliver asleep in her lap, his broken toy car still in his small hand. Adrian entered quietly. Clara tried to stand. Mr. Westbrook, please, he said gently, sit. He looked at Oliver, then placed an envelope on the table. What is this? Clara asked. A new contract, Adrian said. Head of household staff, proper salary, benefits, and a real cottage on the estate grounds for you and Oliver. Clara stared at him, stunned. Sir, I can't accept charity. It isn't charity, Adrian said. It's respect, something I should have given you long ago. Tears slipped down Clara's face. 3 months later, Westbrook Manor was no longer the same. Not outside, the gates were still high. The marbles still shined, the chandeliers still sparkled. But inside, everything had changed. Staff were called by their names. Their children were welcome at family events. Mrs. Larkin finally received the retirement support she had quietly needed for years. And Clara no longer walked with her eyes lowered. She became the person everyone trusted to run the house with warmth and honesty. Oliver started preschool nearby. Every afternoon he ran through the garden shouting, Mr. A, whenever Adrian came home. Adrian never corrected him. One evening, while Oliver chased fireflies near the fountain, Adrian found Clara standing in the garden. I wanted to ask you something, he said. Clara smiled. About the house? No, Adrian said, suddenly nervous. Dinner, with you and Oliver, not as employer and employee. Just dinner. Clara looked at him, surprised by the softness in his voice. Before she could answer, Oliver shouted from the grass. Say yes, Mama, Mr. A needs friends. Clara laughed through her tears. Then she looked at Adrian and nodded. We'd like that. Oliver ran over and grabbed both of their hands, smiling like he had fixed the whole world. And maybe, in his small brave way, he had. Because that night, when everyone else saw a tragedy, Oliver saw the truth. And by refusing to stay silent, the maid's little son didn't just save a billionaire's life. He gave his mother a future she had stopped believing could ever belong to her.